Now, we're getting a good answer about the Shravasti Kimbos suggestion. We'll pour this all on her. A number of weeks back, that this understanding of dependent arising, promoting realization of emptiness, promoting realization of dependent arising, realization of dependent arising, promoting realization of emptiness, is the illusory-like realization. And then the Dharma is teaching us this is not what's being talked about. So, Kinbo is being slapped in the face, along with a bunch of the rest of us. That's not what's being talked about. Wow, it's not. You know, that's what's called being slapped in your face. It's not. Even if you're aware, you know, I'm sitting forward. It's not. That's, you know, quite often we depict this as like the pointedness of our, you know, it wants to be slapped down, wants to be knocked off. The, what was it? The vibrance. I guess that's where the vibrance is still being held on to, right? It's not. And so we want to figure out how to knock down the vibrancy of our wrong idea, if the Dharma is right, the vibrancy of it, right? The vibrancy of our, or as Geshe-Rabten said, it's like the initial doubt that we have, doubt of an old friend. You know, our idea, you have some doubt. It's not that you have doubt against the old friend yet. You might have just some initial, really? My old friend is trying to cheat me? You know, that kind of doubt where you think, oh, maybe my old friend is trying to rob me. Really? Could that be? Could that be? Right? That's equal doubt, right? Or maybe it's, well, I don't think he could be cheating me. But that's the initial doubt, you see. Somebody of some idea that you've trusted all along. So that in this case, it would be opening up the way, opening the mind, opening doubt, right? What was it? I'm trying to remember. His Holiness is saying skepticism and faith in Buddhism go together. Skepticism, you know, you gotta have skepticism. You can't just say, oh, Dendal Dharma said so, it's gotta be right, and now I'm gonna go watch television. Turn on the next channel. On some entirely different topic, you know, it becomes something to explore, I've got to explore about my old friend trying to cheat me and take away all of the Uma Institute's, I was going to say all of the Institute's money. Yeah, sure. That you're going to live all of my money that I'm going to live on. I got money. Geshe Wangel taught me how to live. I have a friend who used to be rich, and she lost all of her money, I was told. Despite the fact that she also was one of Geshe Wangel's students. He sure enough taught me not to waste all your money, how to keep your money. Okay. So, an affirming negative. So this book and the education process that those who have been around a while, we went through a chapter about affirming negatives and non-affirming negatives. And so you would think that if dependent arising is appearing and emptiness is appearing, then we've got some sort of affirming negative. That what we're realizing is affirming negative, like a combination, like an illusory-like appearance. So what you see is in an illusory-like appearance, what you're seeing is an appearance of inherent existence. But you understand and that's illusory, and there's actually an emptiness of inherent existence. So it's going to be hard for, in this case, what's appearing, one appearance is a dependent arising, and you can't say that isn't a positive. And the other appearance is an appearance of an utter absence of inherent existence. So what Dendalaramba says, he says the appearance of dependent arising is not in place of what emptiness negates. Emptiness is the negative of inherent existence. And dependent arising is not the replacement of inherent existence. You don't negate inherent existence and replace that inherent existence with dependent arising. The dependent arising, the sprout, or one's body, is the substratum. And you're realizing the emptiness of inherent existence of that. What you're negating is inherent existence. So even if to the inferential consciousness, which you can also just call it to the inference, but that's the consciousness, the substratum, your body, is still appearing and the emptiness of it is also appearing. The dependently arisen body is not appearing in place of the inherent existence of the body. Now remember, there's two perspectives. The appearance perspective and the ascertainment perspective. And in the ascertainment perspective, what you're ascertaining is a mere absence. And this finger thing is not something I made up. It's what the geishas and geisha lamas, right? Well, the geishas in one way are lamas. Lamas are teachers. And there are two types of lamas, reincarnate lamas, and then also persons who become lamas because they become abbots. And then also another type of lama who, like Geshe Soba, becomes a teacher for so long, he's also called a lama. So there are people who are recognized by the government or by other bodies as reincarnations, and they're called lamas even if they're little children and really don't know anything. And those who come to know a whole lot, and they can still be just, geishas. And if you're not a Gelupa, you might be called a Kembo, which in Gelup, that term is reserved just for abbots. But in other orders in Tibet, that word Kembo doesn't always mean abbot. It really means more like professor. Although, don't call me a Kembo, please. I follow the Gelupa type of terminology. I'm mixing in all, getting diverted here. I don't even know what I'm diverting from now. Too old. But I used to get messed up with my diversions, even when I was young. And I have to ask people, what am I diverting from? Tell me. Oh, the ascertainment perspective and appearance perspective. Appearance. But then smart people ask, can you ascertain what's appearing? In other words, do you know what's appearing? Do you know two things at once? That's what they're pressing on. And so you do know what's appearing. But anyway, we don't want to get into the tricky questions. So the body's still appearing. But it's not appearing, you see, in terms of what you're understanding, it's not appearing in place of the inherent existence. Like the slob Devadatta doesn't eat during the day. And in place of during the day, you understand he eats like a pig at night. I mean, that's really the force of what you're saying. You know, unless the slob has some disease. But that's not the point. Oh, that guy doesn't eat at all during the day. During the day, he eats a lot at night. This is a fat-shaming culture? No. In fact, this is not a fat-shaming culture. India and Tibet, the fatter you got, the better it was. It was really kind of sad. People got the praise for being really like, you know, a couple of my close students, it was kind of sad. It was tough because some of my medical friends would say, ooh, that guy's in trouble. Anyway, so you understand his point here. Okay? We don't need to read any more of it. So the important thing is, in what we've been talking about here, the emptiness, mere emptiness ascertainment is happening in this, whatever this combination understanding is, mere emptiness ascertainment. And then, you know, this is like, oh, and this oh means the vibrancy of, I mean, something's getting knocked down. Knocked down is the pointedness of the wrong idea, or some new ideas getting in there. And point is not like some tiny point, but like some huge idea is going to be generated. So what we're talking about in this discussion is some huge thing where you're understanding a mere negative that is going to promote understanding of a positive. So one can understand why, oh, there's a problem. Could these two be simultaneous? No. What's going on? There's a problem here. And this is nicely done. This is, he's getting his point across. And so you see, in an injunction, like a Brahmin doesn't, hey, you know, at Shravasti, you know, and now I shouldn't criticize myself like that. The word isn't, we have nuns and we have monks. What's the non-sexist word? The word isn't sexist even. What?
Monastic.
Monastic. A monastic doesn't do that. A monastic doesn't what? What should I say? What example should I use?
Drink beer.
A monastic doesn't drink booze. You see, you don't have to word it as a monastic shouldn't drink booze. One way to do it is shouldn't. But a monastic doesn't drink booze. See, that's an injunction. And you don't have to say that means you drink something else. You know, some nitpicky objection. No. It doesn't mean that. You know, somebody's got a pitcher, not a pitcher, a mug of beer right in front of you. You know, you go out, oh, I got to get something to drink, and you come back with a mug, and your person next to you, a monastic doesn't drink booze. Yeah. How would you prohibit smoking? You don't. It's not in there. It's not in the rules. But
House rules. Interpreted. House rules.
House rules. Okay. It's kind of unsightly, isn't it?
Yes.
So you can't confuse if you remember that section, and if you don't remember it, go back and read enough about the difference between affirming negatives, non-affirming negatives, the basis of negation, and the object of negation. Okay? That next paragraph out at the margin. Earlier, and unfortunately it says error, bookmark not defined. That would have told you what page it's on. Do you see that place out at the margin? Earlier we saw Tsongkhapa's consideration of two cases where scholars confuse the basis of negation with the object of negation. Now, also remember that Dendal Haramba is somebody who says that in an inference realizing emptiness, the basis of negation can or does appear. And other Gelugpa scholars say that the basis of negation doesn't appear. And Boris I, or Boris, we just call him Boris, posited that maybe there are levels of development in which the basis of negation appears, and then due to one's level of concentration, the basis of negation disappears, vanishes, and just the ascertainment perspective, I don't know, in English, zeroes in, but is absorbed in. That doesn't mean confines, but zeroes in on the mere negative, which is, I, in one way, quite agreed with him. it may have to do with the experience of, certainly of the particular scholars. Not, okay. Then in the next paragraph, there's the concern that these scholars are considering is not with the consciousness of meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness. So now, could the term meditative equipoise be used with inferential realization or conceptual realization? And if you remember that in the consequent school, the second period of inferential realization is called, no longer called inferential, but direct realization that doesn't directly realize. Direct realization that that doesn't directly realize emptiness. Direct, but not directly realizing. And I have responded to Shravasti Kimbo's question. I would be willing to use the term meditative equipoise before direct realization. Myself, just my own feeling of things, which is going to bring me into conflict with something I wrote down below, when I'm going to have to remove one word and one clause. And I'm also harking back to something I remember but didn't check from it's either the second or fourth Panchen Lama, I think it's the second, who wrote that commentary that Geshe Wangyal taught on Tsongkhapa's Three Principal Aspects of the Path. Three Principal Aspects? Yeah. I don't know if it's the second or the fourth Panchen Lama. That I think uses words like meditative equipoise prior to direct realization. But that's just my memory. Anyway, the case here is directly realizing that when emptiness is directly realizing emptiness, except for a Buddha, all types of dualistic appearance vanish. And we've talked about this before. These are the five, which I needn't read out loud. You know how to read. But now, very interesting, after that, for conceptual, inferential consciousness realizing emptiness, but this actually is not inferential. It's called, in the consequent school, this is a conceptual direct realization, direct but not directly realizing, to use the consequent school's own. Why is it no longer inferential? Because it's no longer relying on the reason. It's only in that first period of it that it's relying on the reason. Then in the subsequent periods, it's relying on the experience, no longer relying on the reason. But if you have to refurbish it, if your understanding weakens and you need to use the reasoning again, then it's inference in that first period, the new first period. I shouldn't use the word. Well, anyway, the new first period, and you can't keep away from the word new. Yeah, that's interesting. And then in the next period, you're right there. You're no longer relying on the reasoning, but you're relying on the experience. This is one of Chandrakirti's refusing to go along with his contemporary scholars who are, I'll use what I think is his attitude, infatuated with Dharmottara's psychological perspective. And he's going along, that takes the pra of pramana, Sanskrit, as meaning first. But I just use first. And he is using pramana as meaning experience. Okay. We already made the final point of that paragraph. So then, we're obviously thrust into issue 42. Do the two ascertainments occur simultaneously? In Dendal Haramba's book, these are just individual sentences, and what I'm doing is slowing it down and announcing what's behind each sentence or two sentences. And what's behind the movement of what he's passing through. What he's passing through is brilliant. I mean, it's really important. Although I'm bringing up what Noam Belden is saying. What Dendal Haramba says, I was wondering, a few lines into this, in this, do I have to say in this consequentialist system or in this consequent system? I think consequentialist. In this consequentialist system, the proposition is realized, so that's the subject and predicate. Thus, this sprout is empty of inherent existence, right? Sprout, my body. Sprout just stands for everything. It's frankly, an unfortunate, stand-in for everything. Even worse than Sprout is X. X is empty of inherent existence. At least, let's switch it off to body. If body is too touchy, you see, they're trying to make something that isn't too touchy, too fraught with emotion. But touchy might be mistaken for meaning touchy. My body is touchy. Don't touch me. I'm too touchy. I don't know. Does touchy ever mean that? I'm too sensitive. My body's too sensitive. Somebody who's had Lyme disease, the body is a bit like that. Actually, I can't hold a microphone. I need to. I don't explain this to people, but I can't hold a microphone. Because I've had Lyme disease, literally, it becomes extremely painful. Just, I can hold it for a little while, but not long. And I've read this of people who've had Lyme disease. You can't hold a posture very long. You can't stand long. I was very happy to read a woman's story. Oh, that's exactly my problem. I wouldn't call that touchy. Once in Taipei, I said, get a cup and empty cup and just put it in front of me and we'll put it on the table. They couldn't find a cup. It took them a few minutes to find a cup to put it in. But I couldn't go into here I was sitting in front of 100 people or so in a small room. I couldn't explain. Anyway, in this consequentialist system, the proposition, my body, is empty of inherent existence, right? That's the proposition. Is realized while the functioning of just the awareness apprehending the property of the subject. The property of the subject is my body is a dependent arising. Now, that you've just realized. But that means the functioning of that realization. Now, that doesn't mean the realization is still there. That consciousness is still there. But its functioning is still there. You see, Dendal Haramba has, like its reverberation is still there, its impact is still there. Now, its impact is there, its functioning is there, but it's not there. It's like the impact of something is so big that the impact of it is reverberating while you're thinking about making dinner for the monastery. And you have to do all sorts of things, you know. This is over here, that's over there, this is over here. But the functioning of something is so big that you can do all these things and think this out, think that out, think this is out. But the functioning of whatever it is still there. Well, the functioning of just the awareness apprehending that my body is a dependent arising, or my parent has died, my good friend has died. You see, the grieving. Grief is used. Grief is, is used as an example of this. Some big event, some impact event. Compassion. You see, before meditating on emptiness, gaining ground on compassion, gaining significant ground on compassion, such that the functioning of that consciousness remains. So you see, there's a vocabulary for talking about having the impact of a consciousness without the consciousness being there. Now you could say that's having your cake and eating it too. In other words, you ate the cake, but the cake's still there for you to eat it tomorrow, which would be pretty damn cool if you could do that. I eat the chocolate cake. I ate it before we had our meeting, and yet it's still in the fridge so I can eat it tomorrow or give it to somebody else. Have your cake and eat it too. Have means I got it in the fridge. I can give it to somebody else. But I ate it. I didn't eat chocolate cake before the class, by the way, before our meeting. I didn't eat anything on breakfast. Really, my usual huge bowl of cereal.
May I ask one question about
Please.
this? So in the text, there's this topic of the one consciousness or awareness that's functioning not to generate the jibun manyampa.
Yeah.
And then there's also talk of one consciousness embracing another one. Lo chigi, lo shanda, zim.
Yeah.
Tongi tobe sharapki, ningji, zim, zimpilo.
Yeah.
That's
Is it
in English what you call that? Yeah.
Yeah. Affected by the other.
Okay. Are those the same concept, or are they getting at something a bit different?
Well, first I'd have to say I don't remember any place where the two are equated. So just offhand, I would equate them. I would dare to equate them right now. I would dare. That's the sort of thing done in debate when you don't really know, but then you do equate it just to find out if there's any good rebuttal. So you can learn something. So I could learn something. Cheba Manyamba. So the word is so much the same that I would equate it. I don't see any problem equating. So usually it's so easy to make the mistake that the impact of the one couldn't possibly be there. Because you can't have two consciousnesses operating at the same time. Forget it. You know, that's totally wrong. Totally wrong. But then in Gomang, they have worked out that you can have one awareness in Tibetan, Gokyur, and the other one, Ngungyur. But it's not talking about that here. So, one consciousness manifest, and the other one how am I going to translate? How do I translate? One consciousness manifest, and the other one, the usual way I translate the other word, Gokyur, as hidden. But subconscious. I think I use, but subconscious doesn't work. I forget my own word for it. Gomang, where it's on the path of seeing, when emptiness is being directly realized. Oh, I'm glad you asked this. I guess it gets into a complication of Gomangs. In Gomang College, compassion, two awarenesses exist simultaneously in direct cognition of emptiness for a bodhisattva, because compassion it's not manifest, but it is, and I have a word for it in the English. In Tibetan, it's Gokyur, but Gokyur hardly, the hidden is not a good enough translation.
What about subliminal?
Subliminal, you got it. That's my word.
Ah.
You found my word, or you just came up with it yourself?
Oh, Vinamacharya uses that one.
Yeah, subliminal. That's it. That's my word too. And that's Giant Shiva's. That has to be, that's the only good translation that I could come up with. And that's how he gets to have two awarenesses operating at the same time. You can see how Ngawambelding gets around the difficulty by using, you can see the shiftiness, the cleverness of how he gets around having two consciousnesses. He uses the word person. Ngawambelding is talking about this instance where we're talking about conceptual realization. And since he's a follower of Giant Shiva, he is willing to posit two awarenesses. So one will be subliminal, with direct realization of emptiness. Compassion will be a subliminal awareness, actual awareness. and the realization of emptiness will be non-subliminal. So let's begin from this. No, I'll build in. Not that we need to read it out loud, but begin from that for next time.